Hi everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors. And this week's contract tip has to do with vendors. When you are working either with a buyer or a seller and that party needs a vendor for part of the transaction, they typically are going to come to you, the agent, for some ideas of names and numbers and suggestions of what vendor to hire and where to find them. So this is one of the things that, again, your clients and your customers are going to come to you seeking. And obviously, as an agent looking out for their best interest or working with them as a customer, you are going to want to provide this information for them. And as an agent, especially if you're an experienced agent, or if your company, your brokerage has vendors that a lot of the agents in that brokerage have used, or they have a preferred vendor list, you are going to want to support those vendors. However, that all being said, you as the agent, you must be extremely careful in how you provide this information to your clients and customers, to the buyers and sellers. And you must ensure that the selection of the vendor is actually that person's choice, not your choice. In other words, make sure they have a choice, number one, and number two, be able to demonstrate in writing that you did in fact give the buyer or the seller more than one name, so that they could make their evaluation and it was their selection regarding who to hire. The reason this is important is if something happens, nothing's an issue until it's an issue. But when it's an issue, I don't want it to cost any of you guys money unnecessarily by not doing the appropriate things up front that could protect you. So what I mean by that is, perhaps there is a vendor, perhaps it's somebody that you've used, that your clients have used in the past, other agents in your brokerage have used in the past, but for whatever reason, let's just say, for example, a home inspector, and let's just say for whatever reason, that inspector was having a bad day, or inspected a house and missed something, or just something along those lines. Again, let's say the deal closes, buyer calls you up and says, hey, I've got an issue now with the house that's going to cost thousands of dollars, and I want you to pay for it. Well, there's a whole bunch of issues or questions to look into to determine what happened, how did that happen. Typically, you're going to want to find out if there was a seller's property disclosure form regarding that, if there was anything on that form regarding that issue. But one of the other issues is, well, did the buyer hire an inspector, and was that on the inspector's report? Well, if the inspector was having a bad day, or the inspector missed it for whatever reason, if the selection of the inspector that the buyer chose came from you, and the buyer did not understand that the buyer could choose any inspector out there, any service provider, not just one that you gave a name and number, potentially that could come back and have issues for you. So here's what you do up front to prevent any of those issues. If you are an authorized user of the Georgia Association of Realtor forms, the GAR forms, they've got two great forms for you to use. One is F-141 vendor list, and the other is F-125 broker's authorization to hire a vendor. And the vendor list, it does have a place for you to give more than one name, contact information, phone number, and service that vendor provides. And it has a hold harmless statement on there, which is the thing that's really important for you and for your broker. It says, furnishing of any names of vendors provided by broker or broker's affiliated licensee is done as a ministerial act. Therefore, you can do it for customers as well as clients, and only as a courtesy to the undersigned, and does not in any way constitute any warranty or representation as to the quality of the vendors, their services, or subsequent reports. The undersigned acknowledges that they had the option to select any vendor of its or their choice, including any not listed above, and that the broker is not responsible for any representation, guarantee, or warranties of the selected vendors and their services. For good and valuable consideration, the undersigned herewith releases broker and broker's affiliated licensees from any liability or claim arising out of or in connection with the service of that vendor. You guys, the hold harmless statement, number one, is extremely important to protect your financial liability and your broker's financial liability. Number two, it's very, very important that your clients and customers understand they may use any service provider in that area that they choose. They are not bound to using just someone that you recommend or that your broker recommends. And that is true of any brokerage who has any sort of preferred vendor program, affiliated program for closing attorneys and lenders. Again, typically, hopefully, your brokers have, I know we have here at Maximum One, your brokers have selected those providers to be on their affiliated list, preferred list, because of the past work they have done for our agents. But your clients are free to select anybody they want to select. So it's vitally important, again, to protect yourself up front so that if something becomes an issue later, all of this you can demonstrate that the buyer or the seller knew this in advance before selecting the person they chose. So the other form that GAR has, this broker's authorization to hire a vendor, this is used, for example, if, well, I'll just read it. It says, the undersigned requests and authorizes broker or broker's affiliated licensee to hire the vendors listed below on behalf of the undersigned and at the undersigned's expense. So that would be a situation where you are actually arranging, scheduling, hiring a specific vendor on behalf of your client or customer. So again, it has a place for the name, the service to be provided, the phone number, and the expense. And then the signature, it has that same hold harmless statement and disclosure statement that I just read. And then the signature at the bottom of that form is the signature of your public person, either your buyer or your seller. And it does have a copy to the person signing and a copy to your broker. So again, you guys, you are all independent contractors of your broker, and you have to, your brokers, well, just in general, y'all need to protect your license, protect your livelihood, number one, by making sure that everything is clear up front in writing and agreed upon by the buyer and the seller. Number two, you need to make sure that your buyers and sellers understand their options and their choices within this whole process of buying and selling a house. Regardless of any phone conversations you have, there's no specific way to prove what conversation you had, number one, and number two, there's no specific way to prove that the party on the other end of the phone understood what it was that you said. So it's vitally important that you get these forms signed in writing, especially when recommending or suggesting vendors, so that you have in writing that the client does understand their choice and does agree to hold you harmless because they understand you don't warrant their work. So the question comes in, well, gosh, I've got a vendor that I've used or my past clients have used, and I'm really happy with this service. I don't want to give more than one name. Well, again, you are better protected by giving more than one name. And then you simply say that to the buyer or the seller. Just want to let you know, here are 2, 3 of many service providers. There are other providers out there, other inspectors out there, other home warranty companies out there, so forth and so on. In the past, my past clients have used so forth and so on and have had a really good, they've gotten really good service from that person. And then again, if your past client is willing to give a testimonial, feel free, if it's okay with your past client, to give your current client their name and number so they can talk about the service that vendor provided. So hopefully this contract tip helped you out, and thank you so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.